everyone. Nice to see you. So what does being brave actually mean, and acting with purpose? Well, when you look at brave, it means facing fears or being courageous. And that's something that's really exciting for us as individuals and as marketeers. I'm going to talk a bit about that today and use some case studies to bring it to life in terms of how corporations are acting with purpose and what it takes for them to do that. So I'm Emma Thornton. I'm excited to see you here today, and I'm going to dive right in. So the world today, we're facing a lot of disruption. We're facing disruption in terms of global economic systems. We're facing disruption in terms of the economy. We're facing disruption in terms of splintering of long-held social constructs. And we're seeing a lot of polarization of wealth as well. And along with this disruption, there's a huge amount of acceleration. So acceleration in what we do, acceleration in terms of the metabolization of content from a ton of our consumers. The demands are high, and they've never been higher in terms of consumer expectations. And it's really up to us as marketeers to answer three really important questions and to avoid this consumer dissatisfaction. So when we look at ourselves as brands, are we really aligning with our consumers in terms of what they expect from brands? Is there a value alignment? Is it a brand for me? Also, as a consumer, why do I care? Is the brand standing for something that I feel good about? Are they articulating their purpose, their why, and what they're doing here, and how they're solving for my problems as a consumer? And the third one is, why would I share? So are they giving me the content, the information, the knowledge that I feel really good about, that I want to share, and bragging rights almost? And ultimately, it's for brands. We talked a bit about this over the course of today, and there's a lot of conflicting conversations around innovation and how and when brands should and can innovate. But ultimately, if brands don't innovate, they die. This is an example of a brand who hasn't necessarily innovated at its core or invested heavily in innovation. They've chosen to borrow innovation. So this is taken from the Prada campaign for Ocean, the latest fragrance. It's Jake Gyllenhaal on the boat, and it's actually part of the long-standing collaboration that Prada has with Luna Rossa. So Luna Rossa is it's basically the Formula One of sailing. So really hot on innovation, really hot on performance. And it's a really clever brand association for Prada, who are borrowing the innovation of this brand to take their fragrance, to take their proposition somewhere new. And so with this increased disruption, what we're seeing is a real strong need for brands to evolve. And this is an example that both Tony and I worked on. And as you can see, top left, Marjorie Dawes in the top left corner. And yes, it's a parody. And yes, there's lots of teasing that goes on in the old sort of church hall style Weight Watchers proposition. And, it was brought to life when I said to my daughter I was going to join Weight Watchers. She literally said, "Oh, you're really going to join fatshamers.com?" And I was mortified. But out of the voice of Gen Z comes, the sound bites, and perception is reality. And as marketeers, we really ignore that at our peril. So what that led in terms of Weight Watchers was a pivot and a shift, not just because of COVID, but because of the consumer expectations and need, but really to an integrated online proposition that was much more about health and wellness and holistic health, not just about weight. And obviously signed a new ambassador, James Corden, in the top right, as you can see there. Because ultimately, for brands, it's about creating this future, and it's about leading. How do you lead with innovation in all you do? How do you empower your team to make the changes? And how do you then reward progress throughout the organisation? And also invite your consumers to be part of that journey. Because ultimately, the power of change comes when you can co-create it. And what we're talking a lot today about the power of data and AI, but ultimately what I'm seeing is a bit of a return to brand marketing, a return to the fundamentals. And I asked my other daughter what makes a great brand, and she said this: morality defined by action. Morality defined by action. I mean, it's a pretty strong proposition, a very strong sentence and a framework for a 15-year-old girl to say. And that's probably not just because she's seen her mum go from Nike and Chanel to Weight Watchers, CBD brands, so essentially selling cannabis, and then into alcohol. But there's definitely something there in terms of how Gen Z perceive your brand and really what you stand for. But ultimately, if you're talking about brand marketing, you do have to nail the fundamentals. Kate did a great job earlier talking about the basics. So we're looking at brand vision, brand plan, brand action, but actually all of that needs to be underpinned by purpose. because ultimately, as brands, it's our responsibility, it's our duty as marketers to really use the brands to move the world forward and be a force of change and a force of good. And consumers are looking for that. And that starts with belief. So I'm sure you know who this brand is. It's not showing any apparel or any outdoor clothing, but it's Patagonia. And I think what's super interesting about Patagonia is they're not just about products. They've never just been about what they're selling. They're going beyond fashion, and they're advocating for climate activism, which really drives at the core of why they exist, because without protecting the climate, without protecting their reason for being and what's so much a part of their DNA, the consumer's not going to be able to buy their products or have a use for their products. But the element of being bold and being brave really comes to play in terms of marketing when they take a stand like this. So this is a Black Friday ad which came to the marketplace, and it's really driving trust through transparency, and really going right when all the competition are going left, and creating something that's really making a stand. So by doing this, they're saying, don't go shopping, don't go and don't buy into the consumerism of Black Friday. We want you out enjoying nature. We want you experiencing the world that we're all proud to be a part of, and that we're all working hard to protect. So what that means is Patagonia really focused on 3 core areas: community and content, and then obviously that drives commerce. And what's interesting is they know that by creating a platform and creating the opportunity for their community to have a voice, they can win small to win big through elevating these small stories at scale. Everyone knows who this brand is, of course. It's Dove. And I think it's a great example of leading with purpose, because it really is the communication of the why and why the brand exists. It's leveraging a key consumer insight, and it's really a purpose-led proposition around real beauty. And what's great is it has had that longevity in the marketplace that people can really believe in. So moving on, this is Nike, and talking about consumer insights with Dove, for example, Nike does exactly the same in terms of the propositions they bring, innovation all the way through from design to product to brand to marketplace. This is Flyknit, created around 4 key consumer benefits. Number 1, performance. Number 2, lightness. Number 3, form-fitting. And number 4, sustainability. So what's exciting about this is it doesn't just serve the consumer in terms of a new shoe. It's actually had the impact to change the whole of the way that shoes, not just with Nike, but globally, have been made. What it did is move the industry itself from a cut-and-sew method of make to one where it's a knitted upper. So it's made on a machine, and it's super quick. And it also can be more defensible in terms of the IP for the designs that are put in place. It can be nearshored, so you're solving for a lot of supply chain issues as well, and the competition, and also it stops copying, for example, and forgeries, which we know are an issue. And not just that, but the brand proposition was delivered. So here you recognise Samo, I'm sure. This is actually in Rio. So what we did as a brand is we launched 2 distinct colourways to showcase the innovation. Super bold. The first one was Volt, the plain bright yellow, in 2012 in London. And the second one was Volt Plus. Struggled to find a more impactful name. But as you can see, it's the Volt colour with pink. And of course, in terms of performance, no one delivers it better than Samo, so winning the double-double in Rio. But it wasn't just about showcasing that singular consumer benefit. It really was about telling the story and the purpose behind the shoe and the purpose behind the innovation. So we did that by being brave and collaborating with a fantastic innovator called Arthur Huang, based out of Shanghai. And he created this amazing art display, made from the yarn itself, but also made from plastic because of the recyclability in the shoe. And when brands hand their brand and their products to collaborators, you're really placing a lot of trust in these collaborators, and you're being brave because you're letting them recreate the shoe and the consumer benefits and reimagine it in a new and different way that breathes life and freshness into the brand. Who recognises this image? Anyone? It's Beyoncé. It is taken from her track Apeshit, which was filmed at the Louvre. And it was the first time that anyone was allowed to film a music video in the Louvre. And not many people know this, but before she signed to Nike, we were in deep conversations with her to join the Jordan and Nike. Before she signed with Addy, we were in deep conversations with her to join the Nike and Jordan family. And if you listen to the songs of the lyrics, it's genius. She talks about, give me my paycheck, put some respect on my check, and pay me in equity. And that is a fantastic example of how a potential collaborator is already deeply embedded with your brand and already being really brave on your behalf. In this image, for example, she's standing in front of the Nike Goddess of Victory statue. Super intentional. We had 10 months of conversations and internal presentations. I'm going to show you where we ended up. It was never really with Beyoncé about her singing, about her performing. And it wasn't really even about the product. It was really about that co-creation and that ability for us to change the world through sport and really create a legacy with her and empower women through sport. So what we want to do is co-create the lifestyle of sport, really expand the aperture, widen the aperture of sport, and do that by dimensionalizing a lot of the Nike female athletes to inspire a new generation. But of course, a lot of these tactics need to be rooted in clear goals across business and brand. So this is where we landed in that sense, all underpinned by a content proposition that was all about Beyoncé telling the stories of Nike female athletes, which traditionally have been quite one-dimensionalized. So it was about broadening out the conversation, broadening out the brand, and really sort of encouraging every girl globally to play sport. And ultimately, obviously, the goal for that is to create a better world for her through sport. So the plan was brave. It was rooted in a very purpose-led mission. But what was actually really brave is that we decided to walk away from the deal. We decided that we wouldn't be able to execute in a way that really gave Beyoncé enough creative control to really make enough difference. So there's bravery in doing deals or following through on well-set plans, and there's also bravery in walking away. And it's really up to you where you sit and where and when and how, as a brand, you make those risks. Because you have to take risks and you have to be brave. And I was at Nike during BLM when the Nike brand stood behind Colin Kaepernick. And I don't know if you remember that, but it wasn't a popular decision everywhere, for sure. We had people in the streets burning Nike shoes. The brand itself went up against Trump, let's face it. And there was a lot of dissatisfaction from a number of people within our consumer set. But we knew, like my daughter knows, that brands exist within a society and we have to serve that society. So it's about the risks that we take in order to do the right thing. And as employees of Nike, we were incredibly proud that the brand took a stand in that sense. Another example, which you may or may not know, this is a wholesale account of Nike's called Dick's Sporting Goods. Now, and this was a decision made by the CMO and the CEO at the time, and it was after the Parkland shooting. And Dick's decided to destroy millions and millions of dollars of assault rifles. And it led to 50 employees quitting. It led to customers boycotting the brand who were gun supporters. But ultimately, it forced some change and it forced some recognition amongst the huge consumer set as well for the positive impact that the brand was having on the community. Even an ex-congressman tweeted that the brand was doing more to protect Americans from assault rifles than Congress was. So, and even after initial sales actually slumped, the brand recovered hugely and was on the right side of many people's judgment in terms of doing the right thing and having that purpose-led conversation. So what does it take? Well, it takes an organization that really trusts the marketing team to be able to empower them to take these risks. But it also takes from the marketing team a commitment to inspire the consumer, to enable the community to have a voice and to really lift up and amplify that voice and your voice combined, to empower your consumer to say, to act on your behalf and to share their messages. But it also means you need to be inclusive, so you need to pull in different voices, different perspectives and points of view, and have that element of sustainability so you have longevity in terms of the proposition, as well as providing access. So you've got to democratize access to products, brands and services so that really amplifies and engages. You need to dream big, plan meticulously and execute flawlessly. Easier said than done. But if you do that, you have a chance of really growing your brand to be a billion-dollar business. An example of that is Mercedes, who've done incredibly well. They've got 3 of the key components that I think are super important. Heritage, talked about that earlier in terms of the DNA of a brand, the history, the storytelling, craft and artisanship. They've got performance, So really a huge ability to showcase the technological advancement of the car itself. They do that on the track all the time. And then innovation. So through collaboration, this is a collaboration with Palace, so really sort of widening the reach of the brand and surprising and delighting the consumer with something slightly new. And purpose, obviously, needs to underpin all of that. And it's up to you to decide how you feel about Mercedes in terms of what change they're making and what they're doing throughout the world that serves as a force for good. Because ultimately, it's about your why. And I think some of these brands are a fantastic example of having that, standing for something which really resonates. So you think about Disney and imagination, Nike, human potential. Airbnb isn't just about renting a house, it's about that feeling of belonging when you experience the brand, and Apple about creativity and creativity for all. So ultimately, when we look at being brave and leading with purpose, it boils down to 4 key things. Serving the consumer, we talked about that, faster than ever, as integrated as ever across product, brand and marketplace. Innovating at your core, and really that commitment to advancement, to drive the world forward. Impactful positioning. And that boils down to relatable storytelling in a way that you resonate and you win hearts and minds. And then, of course, true purpose and being authentic with the consumer. And all of that comes to life at the end of the day through your team. How do you inspire them? How do you lead the change and create that? Because your brand proposition starts at home. And it's about how you feel as an employee of the brand that really creates that strong culture that you share beyond your own organisation to the consumer themselves. And it's all about having a team that's supported and trusted and empowered to take those risks. And then, of course, you can actually be brave and act with purpose. So my question to you to close out really is, what's your brave? So this was me 8 years ago when I was diagnosed with breast cancer in my 30s. It's taken me a while, but I finally got around to making a step, writing the book, and then I've created an anti-cancer brand and platform, because that really is aligned with my values and my purpose. So I want to encourage you all to have a think about how you can dream big, go right when others go left, be clear and consistent with your brand propositions and how they align also with your personal values, and really make those risks, take those risks, and be brave and act with purpose. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, that was brilliant, so thank you. With these brave decisions, ultimately, when you work for a big brand or an established brand, there are going to be many, many layers of hierarchy who will have an input. Do you have any advice on how to convince people to take the brave decision? I'm sure there have been many kind of laws or blocks you've had to get over just in these situations.
Yes, and I think one of my superpowers is diplomacy because of exactly those types of situations. I think ultimately it boils down to making a case for the action, and it starts, for me, that always starts with the consumer insight, and being able to justify the plan and having an integrated plan that you can really project what the results and the outcomes are going to be. But it also means you have to be flexible and you have to be able to adapt in the moment as well. And I think in this day and age, things change so fast and consumers react in certain ways. You have to listen to the voice of the consumer because ultimately they decide. So I think obviously it boils down to rallying the team internally with key stakeholders. I mentioned, months and months of internal meetings, for example, during some of the influencer conversations I was having at Nike. And that's super important because you need to know that it makes sense from a business perspective too, particularly as a marketeer that's responsible for driving growth. But we ignore brand health and brand growth at our peril. We just chase sales and business results. So it's really that combination and looking at it in holistically and in tandem.
That was fabulous, thank you. In terms of being able to be brave and inspire audiences, what would your advice be on, we now have such or much more full pictures of what an audience demographic looks like, so it's not just you're trying to inspire women.
Yeah.
That woman could be a mother, she could be never want to have children, she could have all of these other factors around her life. What would your advice be to find the common red thread that connects all of these people and inspire them where they could be so different despite being a woman?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of segmentation boils down to your data and analytics as well, but also really analysing that path to purchase so you know what's going to make a difference in terms of the sale. For example, at WW, we looked at the women of certain ages, of course, but there was a stage and a moment within their life that really made a difference that we were able to focus on. Whatever their age, it was something that was motivational or inspiring for them, or it was a trigger to really want them to engage in the brand. So we have the benefit, of course, of all this data available to us. It's really what we do with it. But I think we forget sometimes the humanness of what we're trying to do and how we're trying to appeal to people. And it's really about creating that empathy and that understanding so they've got that ability to realise that it's a brand for them, but also in the moment take that decision. So, yeah, everything from mindsets to archetypes to really diving into that level of segmentation, but also I think the key moment in the purchase decision is critical as you move them down. But yeah, that's the age old. That's a really important question when you want to be able to serve at scale, but have the one-to-one relationship.
Okay.
That was brilliant. More of a selfish question, really.
Yeah.
So you're clearly very brave, not only at work, but also in your personal life. That must be something that comes to you quite naturally. Is there anything that you would share as your top tip for personal bravery?
That's a good question. I think I've had some amazing mentors and coaches along the way that have really inspired me, and I love having that relationship with other people now. So a lot of it, I think, boils down to who you surround yourself with and the opportunities that you get and you give to others to really empower them to take those decisions, to make those choices, because ultimately it's, and you know, the conversation with a lot of the influencers I've worked with, whether it's Travis Scott, Kendrick Lamar, or nearly Beyonce, when my kids thought I was cool, are really around what's the legacy piece, you know, what do you want to be remembered for, and how we can do that every day. We can, you know, lead with kindness and then create a way that leads a path decisions that lead us where we want to go. But it's practice, I think, as well.
Well, that's a great note to end on. Practice.
Yeah, there you
Practice
go.
makes perfect. Right,
Yeah.
thanks.
Thank you so
very
much. Great.
For your time. And off to more networking. And we're back here at 4 o'clock for one of your last sessions. So enjoy.
Thank you.